Hello, and thank you for dropping in as we explore the natural wonders of the Sydney Basin. And we're going to start this clip by exploring one of those natural wonders right here under Observatory Hill, right here in the centre of Sydney, and how this natural wonder helped define the early European landscape within Sydney. And that natural wonder is a giant layer of rock called the Hawkesbury Sandstone, which encircles the central part of the Sydney Basin to the north, around to the west and the south. The landscapes associated with the Hawkesbury Sandstone around this central part of Sydney are quite picturesque and dramatic, and include those such as Broken Bay and the Hawkesbury River, the Hornsby Plateau, and it is through the Hornsby Plateau that you would drive if you're heading north or coming south into Sydney, and you'll see these massive cliffs alongside that particular roadway, and in the most part they're Hawkesbury Sandstone. As we swing around to the east, the Hawkesbury Sandstone features in landscapes such as those around the eastern suburbs like Watsons Bay, but also the Heads. Heading south from Sydney Harbour, and the whole coastline of the eastern suburbs is pretty much Hawkesbury Sandstone, and it frames some of our iconic beaches like Bondi, Bronte and Coogee. And if we keep on heading down south, you've got Botany Bay with its sandstone heads, and then further south again, those areas around Port Hacking and the Georges River. And then if we swing around to the west, you've got Royal National Park, the Warranora Plateau, and then you come up north a bit to the lower Blue Mountains areas. Our first stop is going to be at the popular Rocks Precinct on Sydney Harbour, just beneath the southern approach bands of Sydney Harbour Bridge. And in visiting this area, I'd like to acknowledge its traditional name of Talawalada, and also acknowledge the Gadigal peoples who are the traditional custodians of this area, and I pay my respects to these and all Aboriginal peoples. Sydney was built on Hawkesbury Sandstone, as we've been mentioning, and what a better place to see that than here at what's aptly called The Rocks, down in Sydney, around Circular Quay, and you just get a sense of how massive this sandstone is. And obviously not like the big cliffs up in the mountains and on the heads that we're looking at, but still it pops up all around these different parts of Sydney. From the time Europeans landed on these shores around Sydney Harbour, sandstone became a prized stone. During the early periods of European settlement, most of the sandstone was quarried from a number of local quarries around the Rocks and the adjoining Millers Point and Dawes Point. These included those on Kent Street, which is just below us here as we look to the west, from the western side of Observatory Hill, just below the Observatory building. And this quarry ran the length of Kent Street from the tennis courts on the southern end. And at the tennis courts there, you could see the actual face of the old quarry. There was also a quarry on Windmill Street, which runs to the west from the Heroes of Waterloo Hotel, and the Argyle Cut, which was initially constructed to provide access between the Rocks and Millers Point in two stages, but the rocks that were quarried from that area were used in reclaiming lands around what was initially called Semicircular Quay and then Circular Quay. And there were a number of other quarries around this area, including that on George Street, which is now the site of the Bond Stores. And the rock that came from these different quarries was used for a variety of purposes, including stairs, both private and public, and it's hard not to walk around the Rocks without walking on sandstone. It's a signature rock around Sydney, and it dominates that whole Rocks Millers Point landscape. So apart from the walkways, it was also used in foundations and for buildings such as the Hero of Waterloo, the Lord Nelson, which is one of the oldest licensed premises in New South Wales, and the Garrison Church, which was the first military church built in Australia, and it is a joint parish with the oldest church in Australia, which is St Philip's. As Sydney grew and continued to expand in size, the need for sandstone was being met by suburbs beyond those of the Rocks and Millers Point, and one of these suburbs was that of the inner suburb of Pyrmont. This suburb included operations that became well known and internationally famous, including those operated by the Saunders family. Names of the quarries within the Pyrmont area included the Paradise Quarry in the western area, Hell Hole and Purgatory Quarries to the southwest, and then in the eastern part of Pyrmont, Jones Bay and Pyrmont Bay. If you go for a walk along Distillery Drive within Pyrmont, just opposite Tambour Street, there's a park within which is a series of blocks that acknowledge the three main quarries of Pyrmont, being the Paradise, Purgatory and Hell Hole quarries. There's also some plaques and information about the different buildings that have been constructed in Sydney using sandstone from the Pyrmont area. If you go for a walk down and beneath this particular park, you'll come across some cliff faces which were once the old quarry faces. As we come to the end of this video, I'll leave you with images of buildings constructed with sandstone that was quarried from the Pyrmont area. And I invite you to head out, visit, explore and experience the rich diversity of Sydney's sandstone landscapes, including those associated with the quarries of the Rocks, Millers Point and Pyrmont, all of which we visited during this video. And for now, I bid you well and hope you're enjoying the amazing array of natural wonders which we have within the Sydney Basin.